Welcome to the Non-Wing Worldwide Podcast, hosted by Drake York.
We go to the infield to Drake York.
Thanks a lot, Chip.
This is the Non-Wing Worldwide Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 4 of the Non-Wing Worldwide Podcast. The second time we've had a guest, and today I'm joined by 2019 USAC National Sprint Car Champion CJ Leary. CJ, where are you joining us from, and how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, Drake. I'm here at my race shop in Greenfield, Indiana.
So, CJ, you had one of the busiest weeks of anybody last week. You made the show in every week of Indy race. I think Emerson Axon was the only other guy to do it this week. So how'd your week of Indy go? I know some parts of it were better than others, and you maybe had a couple heartbreaks along the way. But all in all, how'd your week of Indy go?
Yeah, honestly, we had high hopes for the week of Indy. It's one of my favorite weeks of the year. I get to run the non-wing sprint car. We got to run on some pavement, some Silver Crown racing. So used to it. We got to run the Indianapolis Fairgrounds. We got to run the dirt Silver Crown car on top of that, which was my all-time favorite car to drive. But no, overall, I mean, our sprint car sucked all week. Our couple days off here before Knoxville, I've been spending time trying to figure out why we weren't any good. Pavement Silver Crown car was really fast. Bob gave me a great car, and we qualified 5th, which I felt like we were honestly a little bit better than that. We raced really well until we didn't, right? We actually broke a drive line there around lap 100, I think. I'm not 100% sure what lap we were on, but I think we were pacing Bobby and Tanner. I don't know that we had anything for Cody before he broke, but Cody was in a league of his own. And then we rolled into the Little 500, which, is a race that I go into with, I have high expectations, but at the same time, it's like pretty low key for us. It's a great race. It happens one time a year. It's kind of like I treat Chili Bowl kind of the same way. Would love to win it, but at the same time, it's like if it's Heartbreak City, it's not going to break our year. So thought we had front row speed when we qualified on Wednesday or Thursday, and we just missed the front row by a little bit. Bob gave me another great car. We ran 3rd there last year, and we worked on our pit strategy a little bit for this coming year. Got a little bit better pit stall, I believe, and set ourselves up for, I felt like we might have a chance to win. We were running second to Cody with 90 laps to go, and our throttle linkage came apart. The throttle rod that comes from the bell crank to the throttle pedal came unscrewed. So the last, 100, 150 laps, we were not getting full throttle. So definitely not the way we wanted to end our week of Indy. But overall, we had a lot of fun. All of the crews did a great job. I had some friends in town that was helping on the sprint car program since I was off at Anderson in the morning. So a couple of my buddies took the truck and trailer to the track and filled in for me while I was gone. But overall, one of my favorite weeks of the year.
Let's talk a bit about your family. A lot of people know your dad Chuck raced, but your grandpa was actually involved in a variety of motorsports. Just give us a little bit of a crash course on what your grandpa's life in racing was.
Well, my family, we own a construction business. We paint, maintain elevated water tanks, and a lot of people don't know that either. They think we're a construction company. We don't really do any constructing. We do a lot of fabricating, but no real construction. But then my grandpa did a lot of drag racing growing up, and that's really where my family started racing was doing drag racing and on pavement and like the sand rail drag racing. And I'm not for sure what year it was, 80, 88 or 89. They had a circle track race on dirt and kind of like a run what you brung thing. And my grandparents and my dad brought their dune buggy up there, or sand rail, whatever you want to call it. And they raced that thing. And I guess there were some they did well. And there were some midget guys there that they're like, man, you guys did really well today. Maybe you guys should try midget racing. So, here we are, right? But they went and bought themselves a midget, had a Volkswagen in it, and they went and ran at the speedrome and really just kind of started cutting their teeth, right? And a lot of really good race car drivers come up around that time. And my dad got started late. He never got to really race when he was younger. He was too busy working. They ran the national midgets in 93, I think, was his first national midget full season. I think he got rookie of the year that year. He also fell in a water tank when he was working, and that gave Tony Stewart his first start at the speedrome. My dad didn't win any races that first year. Tony gets in the car, wins the last 3 races of the season. So the car definitely had potential. My dad just couldn't quite get it to victory lane. But that gave Tony Stewart his first start. Tracy Hines drove for my grandpa, Mark Dismore. I mean, like a whole list of really good guys got to drive for my grandpa, and I got to grow up around some really good guys and had some really good mentors growing up racing and learned how to do it the right way.
Well, that brings me to my next point. You talked a lot about your dad, Chuck, raced midgets, sprint cars, Silver Crown, actually won the Hoosier.
No sprint cars.
He didn't. I could have swore he ran sprint cars.
The only sprint car race he ran was when we first built our first sprint car in 2010 or 11. They wouldn't let me run at Gas City. We drove there and they wouldn't let me race because I was 14 or 15 years old, and my dad drove it that night. He wore all my equipment and completely uncomfortable. And I think, honestly, Justin might have been around the time that he first came, Justin Grant, and he wheeled him on the start of the heat race, and we had no idea who Justin was at the time. But that's the only sprint car race he's ever ran.
Wow, that is fascinating to me, because usually
he missed the show that night too.
He what?
He missed the show that night too, just a local Gas City race.
Oh, well, you didn't have to put him that deep in a hole, but sorry, Chuck. Okay, because usually the progression, I could have sworn, it's funny you mentioned that Gas City race, because I'm in a bunch of like photography groups for racing, and I think I've seen that picture of your dad, so that's probably where I made the connection that he ran sprint cars. So forgive me for that, but I do know for a fact he ran Silver Crown because he won a Hoosier 100. So what was it like growing up in that family? You talked about your grandpa and all the great drivers he had drive for him, and your dad racing too. What was that environment like for you at a young age?
We've always done a lot of traveling, whether it was work related or racing related. So I got to travel around a lot. I got to see a lot of cool things that a lot of kids probably didn't get to see at the age, and spent a lot of time with my family. We've always done everything together. So we've raced as a family for a long time. It's been really cool to get to share a lot of those memories with my family. I feel like a lot of the kids now that come along racing, they just get transplanted into Indiana, and they're not always around or with their family. So I think that would be tough for me, that's so family based. But I don't know, like I wouldn't want to do it the other way. And I haven't always wanted to race. When I was 5, we were got our first kid kart, and we were out in a parking lot practicing. My dad's put some tires out there, and I didn't even have my first helmet yet. I had on one of his old helmets, and I was making laps, and I hit like a manhole cover in the parking lot, and the helmet actually turned on me, and I ran in the back of his truck. And after that day, I was like, I don't think I want to race. I think I want to go do something else. And from 5 to 9, I played football and baseball, and I tried basketball. Like I tried all the sports that kids normally do. And at 9, I was like, man, we need to go racing. So we got our go-karts, and we went racing all across the country again. It probably really crushed my dad when I first told him that I didn't want to race anymore. But now, I mean, from 9 to 27, we've been at the racetrack almost every weekend racing something.
Wow, that's great to hear. Racing's such a great family sport, and I'm glad you've gotten to share your whole racing career with your family. But you said you didn't want to race, and then you did want to race at one point. So what was kind of the turning point of you deciding, I want to go racing?
I don't know. Like I felt probably that the history, and the older I got to hear a bunch of stories, and I guess I got a better understanding of what the racing was all about, and I got to go and watch some racing, and I felt like no one else at my age or my school, no one else raced, so we're gonna go do something that no one else does, and once we went and ran that first go-kart race, like an actual event, with the right helmet and the right, like, all the right pieces, I felt like it was just in my blood. We had to keep going, and we had to keep getting better, and from the smallest race to, like, winning the biggest races. um, it's just it's something unlike anything else you can do, right? It's so unlike baseball or football or any other sport. It's just different, and unless you go racing, you would never understand that.
Yeah, you make a great point there. I want to go back to one thing you just mentioned, your career in karts. First off, like, what kind of go-kart was it? Was it dirt? Was it pavement? How long did you do it? Just tell us about your karting career, because I personally have never heard you talk about your kart racing.
Yeah, unlike most guys that come up into sprint cars and midgets and stuff, I didn't run quarter midgets. I ran go-karts. We ran flat track, oval, like WK stuff. We traveled the WK circuit. We would start in Florida, and we would run through the Carolinas and Georgia, and through the Midwest. And um, you know, we I I didn't run purple plate for very long, as long as I should have. I moved straight up to blue plate, and honestly, that was probably a mistake at the time. We'd won our first race, and we're like, well, we need to bump up a class and run with the little bit older kids. And I think that helped me tremendously at a young age to be racing with good guys. And it's similar to what I did in the sprint car world. Is I just jumped right on the USAC National Tour at 16, and got my butt kicked for a long time. But I got to race with those good guys, and I learned so much faster on what to do and what not to do. And we raced WK go-karts for, I don't know, a couple years, and we were chasing the Grand National. Was this Golden Eagle. It's like the biggest race on the schedule, and we could never win one on dirt. We'd run second or third. We got all the plaques, but we never could win that Golden Eagle. And out here at Newcastle, at Mark Dismore's racetrack, they had a paved oval. They had a WK sanctioned race out there, and we traveled the whole country trying to win that Eagle. And we traveled 15 minutes down the road, and we won that Golden Eagle at Newcastle on pavement. And I wasn't running for the championship on pavement, so all those kids were upset that like a dirt guy came in and won the pavement show, the biggest race of the year. So it was crazy to us that we traveled all over the country trying to win that Golden Eagle for a couple of years, and we never could get it done. And then we did it in our own backyard.
Was that like your first huge win in racing? By the way, I would like to point out I have an Eagle. Granted, it's probably not as cool as yours because it's for fourth, but I'm on par with CJ Leary in my driving career, so that's cool for me. But was that like the first big point in your career where you're like, okay, I can maybe make a career out of this, and I'm definitely good at this? Was that kind of that first point for you?
Man, probably. It's hard to say. We won a bunch of big go-kart races, and I don't even remember all of them, to tell you the truth. There was a bunch of really big ones, and a bunch of big ones that I would have much rather have won, and I could have traded them in, but you can't. Like, there's a bunch of races that I wish that I would give up all of them to win one Hoosier 100 on the the Indy Mile, but I can't. So back to the Eagle thing. I have 4 Eagles. I have a 360 Oval National Eagle, a 410 National Eagle. I have one of those Grand National WK Eagles, and they gave away an Eagle at Madison last year for the Pavement Silver Crown race, which I don't have that one. I gave that one to Terry Clapp, but those Eagles are hard to win.
Well, yeah, almost forgot about the Paris one, so I can't toot my own horn that I finished fourth and got an Eagle, but that's fine. So you talked about getting into sprint cars at a young age. So what year was it when you decided that you were going to leave kart racing behind and chase a career in sprint cars?
I would say I would say whenever I was 12 or 13, we got a three-quarter midget or a TQ midget. And we started racing that. And we filled in with some go-kart races. Like, we didn't quite hang it up all at once. We ran a season of TQ midgets and go-karts. And then the second season of the TQ midgets, I drove for Tom Sanders. And we raced with the UMRA. And we won the championship that year. The first year we ran with the other club, the MTQRL. We ran third in our first season. That second season though, we did the TQ, and we had built a sprint car over the winter too, which I would have been 14 or 15 years old. I can't remember exactly when the first time that I actually went and raced it, but we went and practiced I think once somewhere. That was a long time ago. It making me feel old right now. Bloomington was about the only place that would let me run the 410 sprint car at that young of an age. And then actually, I think I was 15 because I think mid-year I turned 16. Man, I can't remember. But we won a race. We won a race our very first year racing the sprint car on the local scene. And then, to run USAC, I had to be emancipated. We went and got emancipated so I could run the half miles, it was just crazy to me that, I was going down a path to be a race car driver and I had to be emancipated to make decisions for myself. And, if something happened that my parents couldn't turn around and sue somebody just because I was underage. But, growing at that young age and, trying to balance school and, a social life and racing was super tough. Luckily I had a really cool counselor at school, and she pretty much let me miss as much school as I wanted, as long as I, carried that AB average and kept out of trouble.
That's funny because I had the same thing happen at my high school when I started with USAC. They let me do all the same things. So that's good to hear that that happened somewhere else. But you talked about being emancipated, and for a lot of newer drivers, we don't really see that. Or if you're a new fan, non-wing sprint car and midget racing, you don't really see that anymore. And I feel like you're almost one of the last guys to officially be emancipated, at least in the modern era. So take us through what that was like for you as a young CJ Leary to get fully emancipated just so you could run a sprint car on a half mile.
Well, we had to go stand before a judge, and I had to explain my case, right? I had to tell him that this was my career and this is what I need to do to take that next step, and in order to race with these with USAC and with this group of guys, I had to become emancipated and to run on the bigger racetracks. And it was a big decision for me and my family. Honestly, it was something we knew that we wanted to do, but we didn't want to do it at the same time, if that makes sense. It was at that age, and to be basically a man at that age and to make all those decisions was tough. But like I said, it's something me and my family's done our whole life now, and looking back, we wouldn't have done it any other way.
Yeah, it's so crazy to hear, and I'm glad it worked out for you in the end. But let's talk about the first couple years of your sprint car racing career. You said you almost went out on the road almost as soon as you started a sprint car, but what were those first couple races for you like? Where did you run mostly? And just overall, what was your big takeaway from those first couple of sprint car races?
So we built our first sprint car to go on the National Sprint Car Tour as I was 16, and we were gearing up to go to Florida. We scrounged up. It wasn't a new car by any means. It was like a 2007 chassis. It was some stuff. Actually, it was an ex-John Stambro car from the year he won all those races with Foxco. We bought that from Dan Fugate, I think was his name, in Lawrenceburg. So we went down there and we picked up 2 cars and 2 motors, and it was a bunch of used stuff, but we were gonna make do with what we had, and we hung a new body on it, and we went to Florida. My dad wound me tight, put me in there on practice night, and I'd never been to Bubba Raceway Park before. I had no idea that it was just slimy and greasy for, like half the first night of practice night. We went into turn one, taking the green flag, and slid all the way across the racetrack, got in the fence, and turned the thing over. And that was our own, like, we didn't have backup car. We didn't have, we were super low budget at that time. And I didn't want to go back and face the music with my dad. I knew he was going to be upset with me. And we went back there and we rebuilt the car. It wasn't the end of the world, but, it was the nicest piece that we'd had, ever. So to go and tear up our brand new car at the very first race on practice night was not ideal by any means. But that's actually I tell that story all the time, and I wish I could have a better story to tell. But no, that's how we got our national sprint car start. And I think obviously we didn't win our first sprint car race until 2016, which was 4 years later. But we ran second. It seems like we'd led a bunch of races, and the one I can remember the most is we were in New Jersey on the Eastern Storm, and we were at New Egypt. And I don't know if you've ever been to New Egypt, but they don't. It's
No.
ran by the state. It's ran by the state police, and they really don't let underage kids into the pits. And well, I was 16, so it's 18 and under really in the pits. And I had to go to the front gate and like sign all this paperwork, and USAC had to explain to them that I was allowed to be in the pits. But anyway, that night we'd led like 27 laps, and the yellow came out right at the end, and Brian Clausen passed us with like 1 or 2 to go, and it was just heartbreak city because I felt like I'd done all the right things that night, and the yellow flag really changed the outcome for me. And I feel like I replay that race in my head a lot, because I feel like it was one of them that we should have won. And if I had more experience, we probably would have. But, Brian had stolen a lot of my first wins away. It was cool getting a race with Brian. And like I said, he stole a lot of wins from me. That last race there at Eldora, I was driving for Mike Dutcher and 16, and he'd won. He'd passed us with like 1 or 2 to go at Eldora there, still trying to get my first national win, and that was his first sprint car win at Eldora. So I was glad that he got to win at Eldora there. I know he'd been trying for a lot longer than I had been. So then in August there at the SmackDown, we got our first national win, which was super special.
You talked really fondly about there with Brian Clausen, and we all miss Brian. And you seem like you really enjoyed racing with Brian, even though he stole a lot of wins away from you. And Brian forever will be remembered as one of the greatest in our sport. What was the most memorable duel you had with Brian throughout the years?
Man, there was a lot of good racing with Brian, a lot of good back and forth. But honestly, my favorite Brian Clausen story wasn't on the racetrack. We were at the SmackDown, and I normally always carry 2 helmets with me. And for whatever reason, I didn't have a second helmet with me, and my helmet had I don't remember exactly what broke on it. I think a part of my shield had broke, and I knew Brian ran the same helmet that I did, and I went down there and asked him if I could borrow that part, and he was driving for TSR, I believe, and he went up in the hauler and he's like, "Here, just take my whole helmet." And I'm like, "I don't need the whole helmet. I just need like a part off of it." And he gave me his whole helmet for the night. And I went down, I took the parts that I needed off of it. But, Brian was the guy that would just give you his, the shirt off his back essentially. And to keep racing, to keep going. And that's just the racer's mentality, right? Like whatever it takes to go racing or to keep going. That's why like sprint car racing is so cool. Car comes in the work area, all the teams jump in and thrash on it and get it back out there. And you don't see that in, many other sports. A lot of other teams don't want to see someone else win.
Yeah, you said it perfectly there. Let's now go to 2016. You're able to secure your first USAC National win, but it's not even in a sprint car. It's in a Silver Crown car at Terre Haute. What do you remember about that day, and what was that race as a whole like for you behind the wheel?
Well, we'd built that it was a new DRC we'd built over the winter. I had ran my first Silver Crown race for 6R Racing. I think my first race was probably Belleville. but we'd built a new car, and that was, I think, the second year on that car. And we honestly, we were good all day. We chased Justin all day. He was really good. Justin also, I mean, he was equally as good as we were. And my dad was spotting for me, which was super special. We had a late race caution, and my dad for like 20 laps had been telling me on the radio that there was rubber on the bottom in 3 and 4. Like, he's like, you got to get down there, got to get on the rubber. And me and Justin were just pounding the fence, and Brady had passed me on the bottom right before the yellow. And he's like, basically, Brady showed me the rubber, and I passed him right back, and the yellow came out. And I'm sure Justin's spotter told him that there was rubber on the bottom. And on the restart, Justin had missed the rubber, and we drove right by him on the bottom. And there was 7 or 8 laps to go at that point. So all I had to do was run, a handful of laps without messing up. And I felt like it was going to be hard to beat us because the track was just so far gone. I feel like I've talked a lot about me and Justin on this podcast here, but honestly, we've raced a ton together, and but taking that checkered flag that day was super special. Silver Crown racing in general's always been, really special to me. It's always been one of my favorite cars to drive, and I love working on them. And just the whole characteristic of Silver Crown racing kind of suits me. But winning that race before a sprint car race I didn't think that would happen, honestly. I felt like it was going to be the other way around, but just because we raced sprint cars so much more. But I felt like that kind of put me on the map, a little bit. But overall, I've gotten the most rides out of our Silver Crown race at Eldora, to be honest about it. A lot of people around 2019 and 20, people had called me, and all they want to do is talk about that Silver Crown race at Eldora, where I just pounded the fence for 50 laps. And, I feel like it's more common now than it was then, because Silver Crown cars have gotten more and more like sprint cars since then. But, yeah, just that first win was super special. My dad was able to spot for me, and it was just a small team. There was nobody special was there. It was just us as a family.
That's so awesome to hear. And you read my mind, because I want to talk about that Eldora Crown Race 2018, I believe it was, at Eldora. Let's break it down, though, because for 50 laps, like, that was a lot happening in a short amount of time for a crown race. So you didn't start at the front of that race. So, and you were able to quickly but efficiently and methodically as well get your way to the front of the field. So how did you get up to the front as quick as you did?
I think we had an issue in qualifying. I think that's why we started. I think we started like 9th or 10th, and we had an issue qualifying, and the motor didn't run quite right. It might not have been up to temperature, but just from racing the sprint car, quite a bit, and at that time, Courtney had been kicking our butt at Eldora, and we were trying everything we could to keep up with him, and I'd learned a lot from following him, and just racing in general at Eldora. We don't get to do it a whole lot like back in the day. They went there a lot more than 2 or 3 times, but I ran through the middle and just slid guys until I got track position. I felt like if I ever would get an open ground, that I could make a lot of speed on the top by myself, and I could, but it would, every 4 or 5 laps later, I would knock the fence down, and I would lose everything that I had gained. Looking back, I'm really grateful that I was racing KT, because he always left me a lane up there, and I've raced KT a lot, and he's always raced me super clean, and you don't get that a lot anymore. And the respect level in Silver Crown racing should be there. Those cars are big and heavy, and they're supposed to be the premier series, right? So just getting to the lead, and KT just pestering me there through the middle. It's even it was even special that he was driving the Galen Fox car, the 56 car. But just I felt like I could never make any clean laps. The cushion was so thin, and the car was so heavy that we just kept banging the wall. And I think we bent just about everything on a race car that night. just to, I'm sure like my dad talked about pacing back and forth on top of the trailer and just feeling like I'd thrown the race away 6, 7 times it seemed like, and just the white flag could never come out. I was just kept counting and looking at the big screen and trying to, count that race down, and it just felt like an eternity.
And you mentioned getting on the wall early, and that was one of the things that even myself watching back home at the time was really surprised you were doing. Because everybody, like you mentioned, you passed a couple cars low and through the middle, but when you got towards the front, you were smacking the wall every lap. Why were you willing to put it on the fence that early in the race? Because again, that's just something that at the time we didn't expect with somebody in a Silver Crown car.
Well, we'd just gotten out of the sprint car, and I think we'd ran second to Tyler, and we'd been smacking the wall for 30 laps in that car, and I felt like if I got up there, the sooner I did it and got my rhythm going, that I would get it figured out by the end of the race. And it was just so treacherous. I never did really get it figured out. I just kept making mistakes, and I honestly I felt like I didn't do a very good job after that race because of how many mistakes I made. And luckily the car stayed together, or KT would have easily won that race. I mean, anything could have happened, and just getting up there and doing it is the hard part. I mean, when you're this close to the wall, I mean, it doesn't hurt nearly as bad as it does whenever you're sliding across and run into it. The wall's been there for a long time and it's not going anywhere.
And then the other thing too that in this race that really shocked me while watching it and rewatching it, getting ready for this interview, is you and KT. You guys were racing pretty hard for second, and then you catch the leader Shane Cottle, and you guys are about 3 wide for 3 or 4 laps. Even though it was a 50th lap race, did you think at any point in that 3 wide battle, hey, I need to conserve my race car and actually make sure I can make it to the end of this thing?
I don't think there was any conserving out of me for sure. I don't know about KT or Cottle, but I was definitely 100% committed the whole race. Normally, Eldora, the racetrack gets so slow on lap times that you don't really hurt the tires there. The racetrack's completely gone. There's not a whole lot of tire temperature, so like you can be pretty hard on the tires there and get away with it versus some of the other places we go where the track's a lot more abrasive and you have to either conserve fuel or conserve your tires or both. And Eldora is normally neither of those. You can normally go out and attack it, as soon as the green flag drops. And like I said, the Silver Crown cars now, we pretty much race them like sprint cars. They just a longer race. We've, for whatever reason, the cars have gotten more sprint car like.
Yeah, that's very interesting to hear you say because I was talking with Justin, not on the podcast, but just a couple weeks ago about the Crown cars, and he said the same exact thing. So it's very interesting to hear you say that. But then we get down to the end of that Crown race. KT is hounding you. You mentioned it earlier. You were smacking the wall just about every lap. What did you have to do to hold off KT in those closing laps to score that big win?
I just need to be consistent. That's all I need to do is make consistent laps on the top and just I kept smacking the wall off of 2. It's super characteristic of Eldora to be just black slick to the fence off of 2, and I was getting a little bit of drive off of the concrete there, and it just I felt like just I was so inconsistent that KT was able just to slow roll the middle there, and I just needed to make consistent laps. And looking back, if I would have just slowed down a little bit, I think I would have been better off. But I felt like during the race when I slowed down just a little bit that KT was able to pester me, and I had to drive just a little bit out of the comfort zone. And I think that's fitting for Eldora. You're never truly in the comfort zone there. You always have to be hung out on the edge and right close to disaster.
Yeah, that's just Eldora in a nutshell. I think you put it there perfectly. You've had so many great moments in your career, and everybody still talks about that crown race at Eldora. I know it's really hard to put a pin in it because, like I said, you've won so many races. You won quite a few big races. But if you had to say, this is my number one moment of my career, would you put that Eldora crown race in that number one spot?
Man, I don't know. It would be tough. There's so many moments that I would put on the top. The crown race definitely ranks in the top 5. I don't know. Honestly, that's a tough question. I don't know what would rank number one. Winning Indiana Sprint Week is probably number one, but that's not just a race. It's more of, it's a whole week put together. But um, yeah, I don't know. I'd have to sit down and think about it. You stumped me,
That's
Drake.
okay. You don't have to know. You don't have to know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that is one that everybody still talks about. But you mentioned Sprint Week. That whole year, actually, 2019, you pick up your first USAC National Sprint Car Championship. Can you even put into words what that did for not only you personally, but for your family and your entire career?
I didn't know. I guess I didn't know exactly what to expect in 19, going out with a new team, and the way we performed was phenomenal. I mean, it was just kind of unheard of that, a whole new bunch of guys got together and we went out, and we didn't win very many races. Honestly, we won the first race and we won the last race. And at the end of the day, we ran second like 12 or 13 times, and we set 12 or 13 quick times, and we were always right there, and that's what wins championships. And I remember sprint week, we ran really well all week, and we got the hub stop, and I think we ran like 10th on the last night. I mean, we almost gave it away at a hub stop, and I was so upset after the race because we sucked at hub stop. I was so upset that we didn't run good, and that we didn't win, and we just won Indiana Sprint Week, and I was over there pouting about one race. But that's part of racing, is that we want to win every night, and you can't always win every night. We do a lot more losing than we do winning, and you got to take those highs when you can, and that's something I've learned the last couple of years with getting older, is that you have to appreciate the little things, and when you do win a race, you have to soak it in, because you never know if you're going to win another one.
Well said, CJ. And you talked about consistency there, and that's what really won you this title. I mean, you could look throughout the entire season. You were always right there. I think it's best showcased by that Indiana Sprint Week title and Eastern Storm, 2 week-long championships that you had to be really consistent to win. How hard is it to be that consistent all season? And also, how frustrating can it be to be that consistent all season long and only win 2 races?
It was extremely frustrating not to win more. I think we all expected to win more, but you set quick time, you start in that third row, and man, it's hard to win these races from the third row anymore. Even today, it's getting harder and harder. So, whenever you start sixth, and if you can run on the podium every night, I think you're doing your job. But in 2019, there were many nights where we were frustrated with the fifth. We were like not happy, and I'm like, looking back on it now, there's times that we run 13th or 14th, and we're like, I feel like I kind of took for granted a little bit, how good we were that year, and you just always expect to do better. You're always wanting to do better, and I come back to the shop and tear the thing apart and try and make it better every week, and that's the fun part of racing, honestly, is I'm super hands-on, and just making the car go fast or go slow. I mean, there's both sides of it, but and at the end of the day, there's no one to point the finger to but yourself. So just try and be consistent. You got to figure out what you want to do. Do you want to win races, or do you want to win a championship? To win a championship, you probably aren't going to take all the risk to win the race that you would if you weren't racing for a championship.
Yeah, how do you draw that line in the sand? Because you just hit on it right there. You either go for wins or you go for championships. So where does CJ Leary draw that line in the sand of how hard to push in certain situations if you're going for a title?
I mean, certainly we push to win every night. I mean, you just have to know the guys you're racing with, and some nights aren't your night, and that's what you have to figure out is, when it's not your night, it's okay to run fifth, and instead of, pushing, knowing that you probably don't have the car to win, or, you're trying to drive around a slider that, you're probably not going to clear. You just have to, you play those things out in your head. It's all split second decisions. And, It's tough to play conservative in this sport because the moment you're not driving hard, you're not going to do well. There's so many guys that have good equipment, good race car drivers, and can win any given night. So you just have to drive hard. And you got to have your stuff right. And I think the sprint car thing is super competitive right now. It's pretty crazy.
And you also talked about it just a touch ago that you're a really hands-on race car driver. And we're starting to see that a lot more these days because I feel like drivers in our area of dirt racing kind of get a bad rap for, just kind of arrive and drive type drivers. But there's guys like you, like Justin, there's a couple others out there that are very hands-on with their race car. Why are you so hands-on with your race car, and what do you find enjoyable about it?
I grew up, like I said, in such a racing background family. We've always been real hands-on, and we've always done everything ourselves. And I've had a lot of really good crew chiefs and a lot of good teachers growing up racing, and guys like Derek Claxton and Davy Jones and Donnie Gentry and Jeff Walker. And then even before then, with like Tracy Hines was mentoring me to begin with. He taught me like the basics and what to do and what not to do. And Tracy told me at a young age if I wanted to do this, I needed to be able to do everything on the car. From washing it to setting it up to building it, rebuilding it, driving the hauler, restocking the cooler. He's like, most car owners, they're going to get a guy that can do it all. You can't afford to have 2 or 3 guys or have a crew chief that'll do it all for you, which, like I said, I learned from a bunch of good guys, and I took a little bit from each one of them and kind of made my own craft. So like I said earlier, just at the end of the day, I don't want to have anyone to blame but myself. If we win, good. If we lose, good. We'll go back and make it better. What works for me doesn't work for everybody. Like I have my shock business here, Leary Shock Technology. What I do to my shocks doesn't work for Carson Garrett. Doesn't work for Matt Westfall. Brad does a really good job back there, and just sprint car racing, everyone wants a different feel, and that's why I like to set my own car up, because I know what I want, and each team I drive for, I know exactly what I need to go and win races.
And you mentioned Leary Shock Technology. We'll get to that in a second. But another thing I've always noticed about you, especially the last couple of years, whether it's been with Michael Motorsports or now BG Dotary Racing, is that you have a package that you like and that you stick to, and it doesn't really matter what team you go to. You're always working on whoever race car it is. If you're driving it, you're working on it. How long has it taken you to kind of find a package that works for all these different teams that you go to and race for?
From about 2017 to now, I've ran about the same package that I have today. Relatively same shock package, same cars, same engines. Like, I think that's what creates good champions. You look at Brady Bacon, and he's been, running the same car with the same guys, and just had the same package for so long. And I feel like that's something that has hurt me, is not being able to stay with one team or have one set group of guys, every night, where, Brady breaks in the work area, and, he has elbow there, can rebuild the whole car in 2 minutes. And, sometimes I feel like if we have a flat tire that we're not going to get back out. But it's the little things, like I said, the little things that all make it full circle to win a championship, to win a race even. Like it just takes so much to win these races. And I think a lot of people don't understand how much time and effort goes into each weekend that we go racing.
Yeah, well said there again, CJ. And Leary Shock Technology, that's a company that you've been really working on. Obviously, you're the owner. I believe it's based in the shop you're currently in right now, correct?
Yeah, it's in the back section of my shop.
Okay. So first off, when did you start the company, and was this something you kind of planned to do over the course of your career, or was it just something that came to you one day and you said, I want to do this?
it wasn't ever in the plans at all. I got sponsored by Pro Shocks in 2017, and Brad Wilson worked for Pro. And then at the end of 17, Pro decided they were going to shut down their program in Brownsburg, and they were going to move back to, I think, Nebraska or wherever it was that they were moving back to. And, Brad was basically going to be out of a job or was going to have to relocate. And we had talked about, kind of collabing and doing something together. And, I have shop space, and I'd already had bought a dyno. So I had some stuff. We just needed some inventory basically to get the ball rolling. And I wouldn't be here today without Brad. He's been a part of so many of my wins, and he's such a big, pretty much does everything on Leary Shock Technology. I can't sit here and take any credit for what the mastermind does back there. I give him feedback, and he makes my shocks go good. But it's so pivotal for us to have the shock program in house. I mean, we can, with the new tire that just came out, it's changed the shock program a little bit. We're able to try stuff and come right back that night and dyno it if we need to, or change something that night, where a lot of guys don't get that kind of treatment or that kind of in-house options. Not saying that some guys don't, because some guys do, but the shocks change so much that it's very important for me and for sprint car racing, really. I mean, every night the track's different, and to have a good adjustable shock is very, very critical.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Shocks, I want your perspective on this, because I've heard a couple of people saying this. Shocks have been, I guess, at the forefront of things you need to do on a sprint car, it seems like to me recently. So how big of an advantage is it for you to have your own shock company? You know what's going on with all the shock technology, and apply it to not only your race car, but, say Carson Garrett's car or any of your other clients at Leary Shock Technology?
I think it's good. I think we all want to win, right? We all have a little different package. We share information a little bit, and when something works, it does. Or if it doesn't. But like I said, everyone's different feel. So our basic package is what we try and push. But then if they want to change something, then we can easily make those changes for each individual. But it's super nice to be able to take the 4 shocks off my car, and if I'm going to go drive something else, bolt them on and know that I have the same package. Like we just said, that I'm super hands-on, and I have a package that I like. So if I can have at least one part of it, I feel like we can make do. And that's the great thing about non-wing sprint car racing. It doesn't have to be perfect. The car doesn't have to be perfect. The driver can overcome some of the circumstances where, like, I feel like wing racing and pavement racing, the car is more like 75-25 versus, non-wing sprint car racing. I feel like 50-50. You need a good driver and a good car, about the same. So I don't know. I think understanding the shocks and having a good shock package is very critical. I think race car drivers are mental cases. I think if they think it's going to work, it's going to work, and if they think it's not going to work, it's never going to work. So, I think that's the biggest thing is convincing guys that it's going to be good, and just having not trying to reinvent the wheel every night. Just having a standard. The standard setup is sometimes the best thing. You get too much in depth with whatever you're working on, and it's over-engineered.
One thing that I really have noticed about you, ever since I've really started watching you race, whether it's been in person at the racetrack or on TV, is that you're one of those rare drivers, I feel like, that can get in any race car. You've been in so many great rides over the years, and I think this year it's been enhanced with BG Dotary Racing, that you can get in any race car and you can make it go fast. Is that a product of just being as well experienced as you are, or maybe is it something like you talked about with the shock program that you can bolt on your shocks and know what's going to happen? Or is it just kind of a variety of things that makes you so good in any race car you get in?
I think it's a number of things. I think experience has a lot to do with it. I think a number of guys can jump from car to car and go fast. And like I said, it's not something that I want to do. You know, I'd love to stick with one team for, you know, multiple years and work on, you know, an end goal, you know, an end game. But um, you know, it's so tough to just jump from car to car. I think races are won right here in the shop, and I think that's partially why I love being hands on, because I know I know how the car is prepared when it goes to the racetrack. And, you know, when I just show up with my seat and shocks, or, you know, just me and Charlie just show up and, you know, we're going to go racing, you know, it's, you don't know. There's so many unknowns on the race car. If I don't do it myself, you know, I don't know exactly where it is. And, um, I think, I think that plays such a big role on whether or not the car is going to win or, you know, run mid pack.
You mentioned probably one of my favorite people to see at the racetrack, Charlie, your dog. First off, let's start with a crash course on Charlie, because I know he's got some fans out there that probably are going to listen to this podcast. So tell us about Charlie's life, because he is, I mean, he's lived a full life, a lot fuller than most dogs out there. So what's it been like having Charlie, and how long has he been with you?
Um, Charlie is 8 years old. He's a black English lab. He's a loaf, honestly. He goes everywhere with me. He doesn't get left at home. He's been to more racetracks than most fans. He's visited Victory Lane many a times. Probably the only race he doesn't go to is Chili Bowl. He doesn't like huge crowds of people, and after about 3 days in a row of racing, he gets grumpy. Um, so he's actually laying here on the shop floor. He's very spoiled, and um, he's like my best friend, man. Like when when someone can't go, Charlie's always there. So, um, you know, me and Christy have really enjoyed having him around. He's a huge part of who we are, and you know, I've always been a dog person, and always if I see a dog, I'm gonna go pet the dog, whether whoever's dog it may be. Um, but I think he brings the morale of the team up no matter what's going on.
And that's one of the great thing about dogs. I was having this conversation with my friend a couple of days ago. That's involved in racing, and she was telling me the great thing about a dog is it doesn't matter if you win, you landed in the parking lot, you lose the race on the last lap. Your dog is always going to be there for you. So, in hard times like that, like I said, when things don't go your way, how helpful is it to have somebody that's just happy to see you after the race?
Really happy. I mean, really helpful. I mean, you lock your dog and your girlfriend in your trunk and you drive down the road for an hour. When you pop the trunk open, one of them is going to be happy to see you, and it's not going to be your girlfriend. I can promise you that. The dog's always going to be happy to see you, whether you win or run last or crash, like you said. Charlie's always going to be happy, and you know, he really just wants to be fed. At the end of the day, we were standing in Bob's trailer the other day, and he just wanted a piece of cheese. And you know, Bob gave him a piece of cheese, and his day was made. So I mean, it's the little things, Drake. I mean, the dogs. I mean, I'm Charlie's whole world. He's just a little piece of mine, and like you said, dogs are everything to me.
That's so good to hear. And I know we have a lot of dog people listening to the podcast. So hopefully some new fans of CJ Leary being made with Charlie the Black Lab. But CJ, before I let you go, let's talk about this year. We talked about kind of the struggles a week of Indy. It didn't matter if it was on the dirt or pavement. Things just didn't seem to go your way. But this year as a whole, you won at Bloomington pretty early in the season, and then you won at Eldora. So how have things been going so far on the dirt side, and what else can we expect you to be doing other than the full-time Crown schedule, of course?
Yeah, the new deal with BG Motorsports has been great. They've made it super easy to mesh with, and like I said, when you win right out of the gate, it always helps. And we struggled this week, but I think I'm excited to go to Knoxville. I love going to Knoxville. I think we should fare well there, making some changes. Um, So excited to go there and just get to run. But before that, I'm gonna run the high limit race at Tri-City tomorrow with Brody Hayward. Actually, I was decaling some wings, and I almost forgot about our podcast here. So gonna do some wing racing. Gonna run like Knoxville Nationals, the Eldora Million, Kings Royal, some high limit stuff. All the hardest races. We're gonna try and go run. Gonna go have some fun. Hopefully make a little bit of money. But other than that, the full-time Silver Crown schedule and probably some local Indiana sprint car racing. Just we stay busy. We run 80, 90 races a year, and that's more than enough.
Well, excited to hear about the wing stuff, even though this is a strictly non-wing podcast. We wish you the best of luck in the sprint car, the Silver Crown, and the wing sprint car, CJ. Thanks so much for joining us and spending some time with us.
Thanks, Drake. I appreciate it.
That's CJ Leary on the Non-Wing Worldwide podcast. Let's now get into the first of our regular show segments, starting off with the racing roundup. And we'll start with team and driver news. Emerson Axum and Petrie Motorsports have reunited to compete with the Austin Drink USAC National Midgets in Indiana Midget Week coming up this next week. If you remember, a couple of years back, Emerson Axum and Petrie Motorsports did the entire season. They were very, very successful. Emerson collecting a couple wins with the team, including his first win with the Austin Drink USAC National Midget Series. And in track news, there is a schedule update, actually a couple, for Paragon Speedway in Paragon, Indiana. They have made an adjustment to their 2023 racing schedule following several early season weather cancellations. Starting off with the MSCS and the Kenyon Midget Series will now race on August 5th as part of the Bailey Hicks Memorial. And number 2, the fireworks special from July 1st is now moved to June 30th, which will feature local non-wing 410 sprint cars. And a reminder to our track series and promoters, make sure to email your schedule updates to nw3pod@gmail.com. That is our email. Once again, that's nw3pod@gmail.com. Now let's get into our race results from this past weekend from all over the globe when it comes to non-wing sprint car and midget racing. Starting off with night number 2 of the Circle City Salute with the Amsoil USAC National Sprint Car Series at the Circle City Raceway in Indianapolis, Indiana. If you remember back to our last episode, we covered night number 1 of that. On night number 2, it'd be Kyle Cummins taking the win in the Rocksteady Racing 3R. Jake Swanson, the winner from the night before, would finish second, and Brady Bacon round out your podium. Emerson Axum, Matt Westfall, Dason Pursley, Chase Stockton, Thomas Meserol, CJ Leary, and Mitchell Moles rounded out the top 10. Your heat winners on the evening were Emerson Axum, Brady Bacon, Charles Davis Jr., and Matt Westfall. The next day, on Friday, May 26th, it would be the USAC Silver Crown Series running the 70th anniversary of the Hoosier 100 at Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park in Brownsburg, Indiana. At the end of a long and grueling 146 laps, it was Bobby Santos taking the win over Logan Seavey, who, tip of the cap to Seavey, they had mechanical issues in qualifying. Started 15th, ended up second, and Tyler Rory grounded out the podium. Another tip of the cap to Derek Bishak with a strong 4th place run ahead of Taylor Ferns, who ran it out of the top 5. Nathan Bird was 6th, Tanner Swanson 7th, 8th was Justin Grant, 9th Mario Klauser, and 10th Mike McVetta. Cody Swanson led the first 115 laps of this race before they had a mechanical issue taking them out of the race, where Bobby Santos would pick up the lead on lap 116 and wouldn't look back, as he would lead all the way to lap 146, and Bobby Santos did roll from the pole to win that one. Now on to regional racing action, and there was a bunch over the course of Memorial Day weekend. We'll start with the Power I War Sprint League at the Lake Ozark Speedway in Eldon, Missouri for the Spring Sprint Showdown. It was Xavier Doney picking up the win in the 74. Corey Schutte would finish second, and Jack Wagner, Gentleman Jack Wagner, would round out the podium in third. Ty Holsey, Craig Carroll, Todd Curran, Wade Saylor, Jason Billups, Farron Crank, and Bryson Smith would round out the top 10 heat winners on the night, Xavier Doney and Gentleman Jack Wagner. The Power I War Sprint League would again be in action on Sunday, May 28th, with a tribute to Jesse Hockett at the Double X Speedway in California, Missouri. Quinn Benson would pick up yet another win with the series in the 15B. Wesley Smith was second. Gentleman Jack Wagner on the bottom step of the podium for the second night in a row. Xavier Doney, the winner of the night before, would have to settle for 4th. Riley Kreisel was 5th. Chad Goff 6th. Stephen Russell, Brad Wyatt, Warren Johnson, and Brock Elliott would round out the top 10 heat winners On the night at the Double X Speedway were Wesley Smith and Quinn Benson. And on Friday of Memorial Day weekend, the USAC Wholesale Batteries Midwest Wingless Racing Association Sprint Cars and the Western Iowa Non-Wing Sprints were at the US 36 Raceway in Osborne, Missouri. Wyatt Burks would pick up the win, the 11W. Corey Schutte was second. Riley Kreisel was third. Ty Hulsey fourth. Brad Wyatt fifth. That rounded out the top five. Then it was Cody Baker, Dakota Earls, Braden Cromwell, and Chris Parkinson, the field. On Friday, May the 26th, the USAC Wholesale Batteries Midwest Wingless Racing Association Sprint Cars, along with the Western Iowa Non-Wing Sprints, were at the US 36 Raceway in Osborne, Missouri. Wyatt Burks would pick up the win over Corey Schutte and Riley Kreisel, your podium drivers. Ty Hulsey, Brad Wyatt, the top five. Cody Baker, Dakota Earls, Braden Cromwell, Chris Parkinson, and Chad Winfrey rounded out the top 10. Your three heat winners on the evening were Ty Hulsey, Cam Schaefer, and Cody Baker. Let's now head out to the West Coast with the Amsoil USAC CRA Sprint Cars as they were at the Paris Auto Speedway in Paris, California for the salute to Indy. And just after picking up his first win with the series, Tommy Malcolm would double up. Thunder does strike twice, I believe was the headline Lance Jennings put. Malcolm scores his second career win with the series. The big game hunter Austin Williams was second, and Matt Mitchell rounded out the podium. AJ Bender, Logan Williams, the top five, Chris Ganson, James Turnbull, the second, Matt McCarthy, Grant Sexton, and Andrew Sweeney, the top 10. Your two heat winners on the night, AJ Bender and Logan Calderwood. Grant Sexton with a really good charge from 18th to 9th, worth noting in the feature event last Saturday at the Paris Auto Speedway. On Friday, the MSCS Sprint Cars were at the Bloomington Speedway in Bloomington, Indiana for one of their marquee events. The Josh Burton Memorial drew in a good field of race cars for the MSCS Sprint Cars, and at the end, it was Bloomington ace Brady Short picking up the win. He won there last weekend on a weekly show. Kyle Cummins was second in charge, and Charles Davis Jr. rounded out the podium at third. Jeff Vinson, Braden Fox, Brandon Maddox, Dason Persley, Shane Cottle, Thomas Meserol, and Mitchell Moles rounded out an all-star top 10 for the MSCS Sprint Cars. 5 heat races on the night. Your winners were Kyle Cummins, Double D, Dave Darlin, Brady Short, Brandon Maddox, and Charles Davis Jr. The MSCS Sprint Cars were not done there. They would also race Saturday at the Lincoln Park Speedway in Putnamville, Indiana. And at the end, the always exciting T-Mez, Thomas Meserol picked up the win in the Epperson 2E. Jaden Rogers second, and Brandon Maddox. Tip of the cap to Brandon Maddox. They had a really tough week at Circle City, able to bounce back with 2 top 10 runs with MSCS, including a podium run last Saturday at Putnamville. 4th went to Chase Stockin, 5th Ty Mahako, 6th was Shane Cottle, 7th Brady Short, 8th Harley Burns, 9th Kayla Rail, and 10th Brian Hayden. 4 heat races on the night for the MSCS Sprint Cars, Thomas Meserol, Chase Stockin, Zach Pretorius, and Jaden Rogers, your winners there. And on Sunday, the MSCS Sprint Cars would complete a Memorial Day weekend triple header, concluding at the Tri-State Speedway in Hobstadt, Indiana, where, no surprise here, Kyle Cummins picks up the win in the Rocksteady Racing 3R. Very successful weekend for Cummins and that team. Brady Short was second, Critter Malone third, Carson Garrett fourth, Kendall Rubel rounded out the top 5. J.J. Hughes, Stan Beatles, Eric Gentry, Chase Stockin, and Charles Davis round out the top 10. In your 3 heat races on the night, Kyle Cummins, Brady Short, and Dason Persley all winners. And just like the MSCS Sprint Cars, the Great Lakes Traditional Sprints presented by Perfit had a very busy week, and they started off Saturday, May the 27th at Fremont Speedway in Fremont, Ohio. Travis Harry would pick up the win in the 21H. Keith Sheffer was second, Steve Irwin third, Luke Hall fourth, and Justin Adams rounded out the top 5. Mike Birkin, Brandon Moore, Jason Ferguson, Gage Etchen, and Ralph Brakenberry would round out the top 10. Larry Kingsey Jr. and Gage Etchen would pick up heat wins on the evening. And to cap off a great weekend of racing for the Great Lakes Traditional Sprints presented by Perfit, they would go to the Waynesfield Raceway Park in Waynesfield, Ohio, where T-Mez Thomas Meserol would pick up another win on the weekend, this time in the 23K, with Matt Westfall running second, Paul Dews rounding out the podium in third. Rippin' Ricky Lewis was fourth, Isaac Chappell was fifth, 6th went to Dallas Hewitt, 7th Ryan Barr, 8th Luke Hall, 9th Brian Ruhlman, and 10th went to Dustin Ingle. Matt Westfall, Corbin Hazlett, and Paul Dews heat winners on the evening at Waynesfield. It was a standalone race weekend for the MPD Racing Boss Sprints as they were at the Florence Speedway in Walton, Kentucky. Former champion Matt Westfall would find himself back in victory lane with the Boss Sprints. He won over Ricky Lewis, Corbin Hazlett, Paul Dews, and Jesse Vermillion in the top 5. Mitch Wismiller was 6th, Blake Vermillion 7th, 8th was Brian Ruhlman, 9th was Cody Gardner, and 10th Saban Bypan. Ryan Barr, Ricky Lewis, and Parker Fredrickson heat winners on the evening. We talked about the co-sanctioned show between the USAC Wholesale Batteries Midwest Wingless Racing Association and the Western Iowa Non-Wing Sprints at US 36 on Friday. Well, on Saturday, the Western Iowa Non-Wing Sprints had a standalone show at the Adams County Speedway in Corning, Iowa. Jake Kuba would pick up the win over Josh Most and Glenn Seville, your podium drivers. Riley Kreisel, Ben Woods, the top 5. Dylan Carstell, Ethan Jones, Chad Goff, Jeff Perills, and Clinton Bruns, the top 10. Your heat winners on the night, Chad Goff and Cam Schaefer. And on to a really big ticket item in our racing results segment this week. On Saturday, May the 27th, it was the Lucas Oil Little 500 for the 500 Sprint Tour presented by Auto Value Bumper to Bumper Parts Stores at the Anderson Speedway in Anderson, Indiana. And a huge win for young Jake Trainer in his first Little 500 attempt. He picks up the win. We'll talk a little bit more about Jake as the show goes on. Caleb Armstrong was second, Cody Swanson third, and Doran Binks Racing put out a press release that Cody Swanson was losing power steering towards the end of the race, and that most certainly cost him. Big tip of the cap also to Doran Binks Racing. Not a lot of teams would outright admit what was going on with the car at the end of a race like that. So good to keep the fans in the know, and they had 2 big mechanical failures over the weekend, so tough break for them. But if Cody Swanson is behind the wheel of that race car, they're always in contention. Cody was able to salvage a 3rd place finish. Jacob Wilson was 4th. Logan Seavey in his rookie year at the Little 500 would finish 5th. Dalton Armstrong 6th, Derek Bishak 7th, Tyler Rory 8th, Brady Bacon 9th, and Davey Hamilton Jr. rounded out the top 10. You heard me talk about the MSCS Sprint Car Series having a triple header weekend over Memorial Day weekend. Well, the ASCS Elite Non-Wing Sprints did the same. They started off Friday at Texarkana 67 Speedway in Texarkana, Arkansas. Cody Gardner in the G6 would pick up the win on night number 1 with them. Paul White was 2nd, Justin Zimmerman 3rd. 4th went to Anthony Nicholson and Keith Martin, the top 5. Kyle Jones, Chase Parson, Jamie Mooney, Danny Burke, and Chris Williams, the top 10. Kyle Jones and Justin Zimmerman, heat winners on the evening. On Saturday, May the 27th, the ASCS Elite Non-Wing Sprints would travel to the Boot Hill Speedway in Greenwood, Louisiana, whereas yet again, Cody Gardner picking up the win, and Paul White would have to settle for 2nd yet again. Chase Parson round out the podium. Blaine Baxter, Wyatt Burks, the top 5. Mike Merrill, Justin Zimmerman, Anthony Nicholson, Chris Williams, and Jason Howell, the top 10. Cuddy Price, Jason Howell, and Justin Zimmerman, heat winners on night number 2 with the ASCS Elite Non-Wing Sprints at the Boot Hill Speedway. And on Sunday at the Arklatex Speedway in Vivian, Louisiana, Cody Gardner would sweep the weekend, picking up all 3 wins with the series. Justin Zimmerman was 2nd, Anthony Nicholson, Jason Howell, and Keith Martin, the top 5. Blaine Baxter was 6th, Paul White 7th, 8th, Chase Parson, 9th, Chris Williams, and 10th, Josh McCord. Really impressive to see Cody Gardner sweep the weekend with the ASCS Elite Non-Wing Sprints. That series just keeps getting tougher and tougher, and hopefully we'll see Cody Gardner compete with the National Series when they go back down to Arkansas later this season. Cody Gardner, Paul White, and Justin Zimmerman, all heat winners at Arklatex on Sunday. Let's now bolt back to the East Coast. The USAC East Coast Sprint Car Series were at the Winchester Speedway in Winchester, Virginia. Is Preston Latimus picking up his 2nd career win with the series. Joey Mantia would finish 2nd, and Briggs Danner 3rd. Bruce Buckwalter, Ed Aiken, Stephen Trevicki, Mike Thompson, Carmen Perigo, Bobby Butler, and JT Ferry would round out the top 10. Danner and Perigo heat winners on the evening. Off now to the southwestern part of the United States for more 360 non-wing sprint car action with the POWRi New Mexico Motor Racing Association as they were at the Sandia Speedway in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Travis Oldfield in the 38 would pick up the win over Rob Marfaria, and Michael Finelli would finish 3rd on the evening. J.R. Boneseal, Caleb Stelzig, the top 5, Theo McCarthy, Craig Stingfellow, Derek Black, Jonathan O'Brien, and Arthur Romero Jr. would round out the top 10. Rob Marfaria and Travis Oldfield heat winners on the evening. It's a very busy weekend at the Ventura Raceway in Ventura, California. Headlining the weekend for Ventura was the USAC Western States Midgets. Brody Fusion in the 51 would pick up the win, coming all the way from 6th to do it. Chase Johnson and Ben Worth, your podium drivers. Cade Lewis, Robbie Gisette, Blake Bauer, Brandon Wiley, David Gasper, CJ Sarna, and Steve Patton, the top 10. Your heat winners on the night, Chase Johnson in Heat 1, Cade Lewis in Heat 2, and Steve Patton in Heat 3. Very hotly contested race. Ben Worth would lead lap number 1. Chase Johnson would then dominate the race from there, leading laps 2 to 24. But Brody Fusion would sneak past on lap 25, and he would lead from there. Fusion actually also ended up with the hard charge, going from 6th to 1st. While we're talking about series who had a busy weekend, the Rocky Mountain Midget Racing Association was back at the Airport Raceway in Garden City, Kansas to complete the weekend for the 8th annual Midget Roundup fueled by O'Reilly Auto Parts. Jake Buback would sweep the weekend in the 27B. He'd win over Lance Bennett and Ben Haney, the podium drivers. Keith Roush, Shannon McQueen, Zach Blurden, Ryan Oders, Michelle Decker, Taylor Turner, and Mark Hamilton, the top 10. AJ Valum, Keith Roush, and Zach Blurden, your heat winners on the evening. We talked about the Amsoil USAC National Sprint Car Series show Thursday at the Circle City Raceway in Indianapolis, Indiana. Well, the USAC Midwest Thunder D2 midgets were in action as well. Matt Lux would pick up the win. He's been on a tear as of late. Ian Krager was second. Bryce Magnusil was third. Stratton Briggs, Marcel Burnett, Tyler Nelson, Tate Martz, Jacob Boxell, Michael Magic, and Abby Holben, the top 10. Your heat winners on the evening, Michael Magic and Bryce Magnusil. Saturday, May 27th, the Badger Midget Auto Racing Association was at the Wilmot Raceway in Wilmot, Wisconsin. Adam Taylor, who's been on a tear as of late in the Badger State, would pick up the win in the 6B. Dolan England was second. Todd Kluver was third. Kyle Stark fourth. Chase Sparks fifth. RJ Corson was sixth. Mark McMahill seventh. Parker Jones eighth. Ninth was Matt Rechek. And 10th was Tommy Colburn. Dalton England and Kyle Stark heat winners on the evening, as well as Matt Rechek at Wilmot. It was another weekend of successful racing for the General Tire All-Star Circuit of Champions TQ Midgets as they were at the Shelby County Fairgrounds in Shelbyville, Indiana. Joey Paxton in the 14P would pick up the win over Robbie Rowland, Johnny Goff, Ashley Alberson, and Matthew Hedrick, the top 5. Adam Bullard, Connor Wolf, Connor Bolding, Evan Shadow, and Josh Petrie, the top 10. Robbie Rowland, Matt Lux, and Logan Prickett, heat winners on the evening. Let's now start with our local racing action from this past Memorial Day weekend. We'll start at the Gas City I-69 Speedway in Gas City, Indiana on Friday. The Bold Time Mahaka would pick up the win in the 24P. Colton Cottle was second. Jack Hoyer third. Kyle Shipley fourth. Evan Mosley fifth. Aiden Salisbury sixth. Zach Pretorius 7th, Braden Clark 8th, Jackson Sloan 9th, and 10th, Travis Harry. On to the Paragon Speedway in Paragon, Indiana on Saturday night. It was the Shepherd Memorial, a 50-lap local non-wing 410 sprint car race, and at the end, it was the 04 Jordan Kinzer. Him and that burn car have been on a tear. Jake Swanson would finish second on Saturday. Cody Trammell, the podium drivers. Jake Scott, multi-time Paragon Speedway track champion, would finish fourth. Charles Davis Jr. fifth. Flying Ryan Thomas was sixth. Colin Parker was 7th, 8th, Sterling Kling, 9th was Michael Clark, and 10th, Cindy Chambers. Dickie Gaines, Jordan Kinzer, Jake Scott, and Kyle Shipley, the 4 heat winners on the evening. On Sunday, the Kokomo Speedway in Kokomo, Indiana would continue a multi-year tradition of the BC's Indiana Double after the Indy 500. Max Adams in the Family 5X would pick up the win over Jaden Rogers, Jack Hoyer, Scotty Weir, and Harley Burns, the top 5. Frankie Guarini was 6th, Rylan Gray 7th, Joss Moffitt was 8th, 9th was Colton Cottle, and 10th, Sterling Kling. Max Adams, Colton Cottle, and Frankie Guarini, all heat winners on the evening at BC's Indiana Double. 2 tracks in Southern California had local sprint car racing over the weekend. The Ventura Raceway in Ventura, California had their regular VRA senior sprints and their VRA sprints. Unfortunately, we were unable to successfully find results for those 2 divisions at Ventura. Same story at the Paris Auto Speedway in Paris, California. Along with CRA, they had the past Young Gun sprints and the past senior sprints. Same story there. Unable to find results successfully for those 2 tracks. Our last local race in the United States from this past weekend was at Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park for the National Pavement Midget Championship. They accompany the USAC Silver Crown Series, part of the Carb Night Classic. Jake Trainer, who would go on to win the Little 500, started his winning weekend at Lucas Oil Indianapolis Raceway Park with his first pavement midget win at the track. Bobby Santos, who went on to win the Hoosier 100, would finish second. Chuck Gurney Jr. in a rare start. Chuck actually only races at IRP. That's all the races he does all season long, and he's very impressive every time he comes out. He finished third. Kyle O'Gara was fourth. Cody Swanson fifth. Justin Grant sixth. Tanner Swanson seventh. Logan Seavey eighth. Indy 500, J.R. Hildebrand in his first midget start comes home in ninth, and 10th with the Brenham Crouch. That is all the racing we had from the United States this past weekend. You heard me say that's all the results we had from this past week in the United States. Keywords, United States. We'll now get to the worldwide segment of our show, starting at the High Tech Oils Toowoomba Speedway in Toowoomba, Queensland, Australia, for the Queensland Speed Car title. Dylan Menz would pick up the win in the 46. He is the new Queensland Speed Car champion. Over Caden Brown and Troy Ware were the podium. Michael Kendall, Tim Devine, Glenn Arnold, Brad Dawson, Lockie Polgar, Jaden Worthington, and Jack McCarthy rounded out the top 10. And Australia does a bit of a different format than what we do in the States. They have multiple heat races for everybody. So you run about 2 heat races a night. Your heat winners were Scott Farmer, Michael Kendall, Michael Stewart, who, by the way, took a very nasty spill at Toowoomba the other night. Glad to hear that he was okay. Caden Brown won heat 4. Charlie Brown won heat 5. And Dylan Menz would win the 6th and final heat race. In action with the Queensland Speed Car title were the wingless sprints at High Tech Oils Toowoomba Speedway. Cody O'Donnell in the 49 would pick up the win. The Queensland 1 of Scott Thompson would finish second, with Brody Thompson rounding out the podium. Tommy Robertson was fourth. Fifth went to the NX36 of Michael Butcher. Sixth went to Timothy Harris. Seventh went to Tim Harris. Eighth went to Chris Catchpole. Ninth, Robert Mazur. And 10th was Stuart Jeffries. And again, multiple heat races for each driver on Saturday at High Tech Oils Toowoomba Speedway. James Grady would pick up the win heat 1. Chris Catchpole, Casey O'Donnell, Ian Mills, Cody O'Connell, and Robert Mazur, your heat winners on Saturday with the wingless sprints at Toowoomba. We now move from down under to way up north. The Ontario traditional sprints had the wing versus non-wing challenge at the Southern Ontario Motor Speedway in Merlin, Ontario, Canada, where a wing driver would take the win. Dylan Westbrook in the 47X. He collected a $500 bonus for defeating all of Canada's best non-wing sprint car drivers. Kyle Phillips was second. Sean Evans rounded out the podium in the 87X. Fourth went to Andrew Marshall. Mike Farrell was fifth. Will March was sixth. Seventh went to Paul Blandtime. Eighth went to Nick Sheridan. Ninth went to Ian Hunter. Your one heat winner on the evening was Kyle Phillips in the 79. That is all your results from around the world when it comes to non-wing sprint cars and midgets here on Non-Wing Worldwide. Let's get into our upcoming racing schedule segment of the show. We are recording on Wednesday, May the 31st, the month of May. Now done. Crazy to think about. Anyways, Thursday will be the 1st of June, and we do have racing on Thursday at the Tri-City Speedway in Granite City, Illinois, with the Extreme Outlaw Midgets presented by Toyota. On Friday is when things really heat up, as they normally do on Friday nights. We'll start off at the Knoxville Raceway in Knoxville, Iowa. The sprint car capital of the world will play host to 3 sprint car divisions, all co-sanctioning on the same weekend. The USAC National Sprints, along with the USAC MWRA, and a special event for them, and the Western Iowa non-wing sprint cars. Now to the Wayne County Speedway in Wayne City, Illinois, for the Extreme Outlaw Midgets presented by Toyota as they go at it for another night. The Lima Land Motorsports Park in Lima, Ohio has the Great Lakes Traditional Sprints. Williams Grove Speedway in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania has the USAC East Coast Sprints. Moeller Raceway Park in Williamsburg, Ohio has the USAC Midwest Thunder D2 Midgets. Bloomington Speedway in Bloomington, Indiana, the only local non-wing 410 sprint car race happening in the entire world on Friday. And then one international race for us on Friday at the Archerfield Speedway in Assia Ridge, Queensland, Australia, for the wingless V6 sprint cars. On Saturday, the 3rd of June, the Knoxville Raceway in Knoxville, Iowa, will again play host to the USAC National Sprint Cars, USAC Midwest Wingless Racing Association, and the Western Iowa Non-Wing Sprints. Outlaws are also back at Wayne County Speedway in Wayne City, Illinois, the Extreme Outlaw Midget Series presented by Toyota, that is. Butler Speedway in Quincy, Michigan has the Great Lakes Traditional Sprints. I-76 Speedway in Fort Morgan, Colorado has the ASCS Elite Non-Wing North. Bakersfield Speedway in Bakersfield, California has the USAC West Coast 360 Sprints. Sandia Speedway in Albuquerque, New Mexico has the New Mexico Motor Racing Association 360 non-wing sprint cars. Atomic Speedway in Chillicothe, Ohio has the USAC Midwest Thunder D2 Midgets. Spoon River Speedway in Canton, Illinois has the Power IMRA D2 Midgets. Magic Valley Speedway in Twin Falls, Idaho has the USAC Rocky Mountain Radical Focus Midgets. Lincoln Park Speedway in Putnamville, Indiana has their local non-wing 410 sprint cars in action. Central Arizona Speedway in Casa Grande, Arizona has the ASCS Arizona non-wing sprint cars, which is a local series there. Petaluma Speedway in Petaluma, California returns with the Wingless Spec Sprint Series. And another international race on Saturday at the Archerfield Speedway in Assia Ridge, Queensland, Australia. The 50-lap speed car race, the last ever race at Archerfield. So sad to see such a legendary track go, but it's sure to leave with a banger with the midgets going 50 laps on Saturday. On Sunday, the 4th of June is when things really heat up for the Nos Energy Drink USAC National Midgets. They'll kick off Indiana Midget Week at the Tri-State Speedway in Hobstadt, Indiana. The MSCS Sprint Car Series will also be in action with them. And rounding out our action on Sunday, the Angel Park Speedway in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin has the Badger D2 midgets and the Wisconsin wingless sprints. On Monday, June 5th, Indiana Midget Week continues at the Circle City Raceway in Indianapolis, Indiana for the NOS Energy Drink USAC National Midget Series. No racing from around the globe on Tuesday, but things fire up again with Indiana Midget Week at the Gas City I-69 Speedway in Gas City, Indiana with the NOS Energy Drink USAC National Midgets. That is your upcoming racing schedule from around the globe. And you heard us not give the entire schedule for the NOS Energy Drink USAC National Midgets. When it comes to Indiana Midget Week, we will continue to cover Midget Week throughout the week here on the Non-Wing Worldwide podcast. But that's going to do it here on episode number 4. Thank you so much for joining us. Also, thank you so much to CJ Leary for spending some time for us. And we'll see you next week here on Non-Wing Worldwide.